Hello, AAFCA and AAFCA members. I'm excited today to bring you a show that I'm sure you guys are watching and introduce you to the star of that show, which of course we're talking about TNT series Snowpiercer. In Snowpiercer, of course, we're taken to a frigid post-apocalyptic wasteland in 2021 on board a never-ending stopping train carrying the last remnants of humanity. Does art imitate life or does life imitate art? Either way, here we are all the same, realizing as we're watching this show that there are these overwhelming strains of familiarity and what really is a science fiction world. At the heart of this series is David Diggs, who stars as Andre Layton, a former detective, I believe from Chicago, who is a quiet thinker who spends his days tending to his cage of rats. He sounds like my kind of guy. Snowpiercer's second season, of course, premieres January 25th, and it is very timely, and it is a visually stunning drama that, of course, is based on a film of the same name. The film is set 7 years after the world has become a frozen wasteland and centers on, like I said, the remnants of humanity who inhabit this perpetually moving train that has 1,001 cars that circles the globe, class warfare, social injustice, and the politics of survival play out in this riveting television adaptation. I need to take a moment and catch my breath because that was a lot. David, I want to bring you in and I want to ask you, before you took this role in the series, had you seen this film and did you feel any pressure because the movie Snowpiercer was so highly praised?
I didn't watch the film until I was sent the script, the original pilot script for the show. And then I read it. I was like, this is cool. And then I watched the film and realized that they're telling a story in the same world, but occupying very different spaces. So I knew that I wouldn't feel beholden to it in any way. It's really like a different kind of storytelling than what the incredible director Bong was going for. So, so that was one of the reasons I felt comfortable saying yes to it, was because I knew from jump that we weren't trying to do the same thing.
Yeah. Andre, he's really a far different character from what we've seen you do before. What challenges did you have with creating him and where did you start?
I mean, as with everything I do, I start with music. So, I knew he was from Chicago. So, and I knew he was a detective pre-freeze, which is 2019, 2020. So so I just listened. I constantly listened to all of and I imagine him a detective on the South Side. So I just listened to rappers from the South Side of Chicago as much as possible. Mostly I like listening to rappers to get into regional speech pattern specificity because you get a lot of it at once.
Yeah.
And whether or not I actually do a dialect or an accent, like the rhythms of it sort of end up on you. And then and then the other thing about Layton that's different, I think, than a lot of roles that people know me for is that he doesn't rely on his charisma. He sort of fades into the background a lot, right? And people tend to cast me in roles where the character is up front and showing off, a lot of showing off. And Layton's the opposite of that. He keeps things very close to the chest and is spends most of his time observing, at least in season 1. And then so the interesting thing that happens to him for our second season is that now he's all of a sudden the leader of the train and everybody knows who he is. And so the anonymity that used to be his greatest asset is now all gone. So he has to do all of these things, make all these decisions in front of people.
That has to feel slightly parallel, I would imagine, to your career, because because I mean, I have to say this, as big of a moment as Hamilton was, and you and I've talked about this before, it was only for a certain audience, and then now, everyone. I remember seeing comments in social media, and people were like, "Oh my God, now I understand, like, all of these actors that I love now, they all were a part of this original cast, and all of a sudden your anonymity is gone, you know, and so
Mm.
people are looking more directly at the choices that you make. Did you relate to him in that way, kind of with regards to your career too?
Yeah, that's wild. I hadn't thought about that, but yes. Yes, it is like I don't have to act much about that part. There's like a certain kind of like shell shock to people all of a sudden asking you what you think about things.
Yeah.
Especially when you don't feel any different. I think Leighton is in that same moment.
And you know, we've also, you know, talked about the parallels with this series premiering at a time and now, you know, coming back when we all are at home. And this obviously is a science fiction series, but it's far more relatable, because a lot of us some days do feel like the world is ending and we may not be on this never ending train, but it feels like we're in this post apocalyptic world, you know, that really should feel like pure fiction. And I know that you guys shot this in advance of the shutdowns, but as you started watching it, as the fans were watching it, what were those conversations like, and what were those thoughts? Because people all of a sudden are watching this in a different prism.
Yeah, I mean, I think the what I've been thinking about a lot lately, because I do think elements of the second season are going to feel pretty on like kind of prophetic to people too. And I think it's important, both with season one and season two, to remember that all of this stuff was written before it happened. And it wasn't before like we were living in the moment that we're living in. And that it wasn't, nobody was predicting the future. Everyone was only examining the present, which means that we saw all of these things coming. Like if it feels familiar to you, that's sad, because it was all you had to do was look at the present, and all of these things were relatively obvious enough that they would end up in a show on TNT. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
it's not like like that's not so it doesn't take prophecy to realize the writing on the walls. And season two is about like a charismatic leader who's only looking out for himself, for a huge amount of the hearts and minds of the population, relatively 50% of the population of a train, right? Like, does it sound familiar?
Yeah.
But again, like no one was predicting the future. No one was predicting a siege on the Capitol. It was just examining the present. And then when we watch it in the future, we find ourselves looking at ourselves again, because all you have to do is look at what's happening right now.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, you know, when you add to the mix that Leighton, you know, is basically leading this revolution, which again feels very familiar to the space we all find ourselves in now. You have to ask, like, what do the creators of this series know that maybe we don't know? Because it's so on brand, and for you to be bringing this character to life at this moment, what does that feel like for you?
I mean, I'm happy that we shot it before this moment, so I
Yeah.
wasn't actually taking in any of this like really right on the nose stuff that we're doing while we were doing it, because it might have affected choices that I was making.
Mhm.
But I think, yeah, I think, you know, the idea of revolution is like such a complicated one. And in the way that we're seeing it play out in America, at least, is like it's fascinating and sort of unprecedented in my life, in that like I don't know, it's so confusing. It's so
Yeah.
deeply confusing, right? Um, uh, One definition of the term is about the forceful overthrow of a government when that is has become harmful to its population. The other definition of a term is literally about rotating in circles around an axis. And those things are supposed to be at odds. But what we saw was in 2020 and the beginning of 2021, what we saw was a peaceful appeal to an existing government to change itself on its own accord. So in essence, to create its own revolution, but by becoming aware of what the demands of the population actually were. And that response was met with violence from the government. And then we saw a violent overthrow of a government in order to maintain the same circle.
Yeah.
It's so confusing.
Yeah.
That is so 20. That's some like truly 2020 shit right there. Like that, like it never popped into my mind before, until
Yeah.
the moment that we're living in, and it's wild. So, again, like to be in a show that was written before any of this happened, but to see those kinds of complications start to play out, and then to watch it back and be like, yeah, we probably did see this coming and we just didn't do anything. It's like actually it's depressing in some ways.
Yes, but see, that's why we rely on television entertainment to take us away from from the realities of what we're experiencing, only to watch Snowpiercer and be like, this feels kind of similar.
Yeah.
I read the funniest thing that you said, and I want to get into a little bit of that because I thought this was a really fun nugget, that you haven't had a grilled cheese sandwich because you had to eat like 10 of them for one pivotal scene that first season. I don't know if that still is the case, that you haven't in all of this stay-at-homeness eaten another grilled cheese sandwich, but tell me a little bit about that scene, and also, maybe a scene that you worked through for this new season that may feel kind of familiar.
Yeah, I mean that's one of my favorite scenes in the first season. It's in the first
Yeah.
episode. But yeah, it was just, the actuality of shooting with food is always way better than the theory of it. I mean, way worse than the theory of it. So we had to do a lot of takes, and I had to eat the whole grilled cheese and drink the whole bowl of soup in every take. And so I haven't had a grilled cheese since. That's not entirely true. I had a bite of one that my girlfriend made that was like an exceptionally elevated grilled cheese. Had a lot of not just cheese and bread ingredients in it, and it was good, but I still couldn't bring myself to eat a whole one.
It just brought you back. And why was that one of your favorite scenes in the first season?
I like in this world that's so big and loud all the time, the moments for small things that mean a lot to a person, because our lives actually are filled with those. And kind of more and more as we're inside more, I find myself crying more than I used to, and part of that is like a sign of the times, but the other part of it is just that like the noise in my head is a little bit quieter, like because I'm forced to like sit with it and parse things out a little bit. And so like I get the space to be like emotionally affected by, something my dog did or some like dumb shit. but there's something about that that's like profoundly human. And so I like when the rare occasion that there's space for just a quiet human moment in Snowpiercer.
Yeah. And then as we think about this new season, without giving anything away, of course, because we don't want to ruin it for people who will consume this season ultimately, what was one of your favorite moments with shooting the second season?
Solid question. I have to remember anything that we did, which is,
I know a lot's happened since then.
Yeah, it's always tricky. There's some very cool stunts in this season, some very cool ones, and there's like some unexpected weapons and like stuff like that. So there are cool things like that were a lot of fun. Leighton gets to spend much more time with Ruth in season 2 than he did before, and like for me, Allison's one of my favorite actors. I think she's incredible. So that was really, really wonderful for me.
We were talking about some of those high action scenes and the stunts, because again, that really is, a far cry from the roles that we've seen you in before then. Tell me about that, because how do you what's your preparation like to get into shape for those things? Do you work with a stunt coordinator, I'd imagine? Do you use a double? Like, what's that like?
Yes, both stunt coordinator and double, and they're both amazing. I do as much of it as possible, basically as much as they'll allow me to do, which ends up being almost all of it. Like Leighton doesn't get like knocked down a lot, and so it's mostly learning choreography and taking a few punches or hits or whatever, and it's pretty simple. But our stunt team is so great, and my stunt double is also a really great actor and like probably more attractive than I am. So like it's always, it's a little weird. Like usually the first couple of takes I'm watching him on the monitors being like, I don't know, you should probably just do it. And maybe the rest of the show also, like maybe I should just go home right now.
No.
But but yeah, we have a great stunt team, and I love that stuff. You know, I mean, it's choreography, and I've always been, I think this is true for a lot of actors who were athletes at some point. Like acting's a great gig, but oftentimes you get through the end of the day and wonder what you did besides eat 100 donuts or something like that. Like what actually did I do? And so like the days of stunt work are pretty nice because you feel like you did something. Your body hurts at the end of the day, and it reminds you of when you used to do workouts like that, or like where there was a physical response to what you had been doing all day.
Yeah.
That came home with you. So I really enjoy that stuff.
Okay. I like it. Now I think I kind of have this right, but please obviously correct me if I'm wrong. I want to know, you guys shot all of season 2 or most of season 2, I think, in advance of the stay-at-home orders, but I think you had to go back and shoot the last 2 episodes in October. Is that right?
Something like that. I think October
Okay.
is correct, although I'm not totally sure. But yes, we
Okay.
had finished everything but about 2 weeks of shooting.
Okay. So what was that like going back for those 2 weeks in the midst of this kind of new way that we're doing things?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty nerve-wracking. I hadn't, is that true? Had I not? I think I hadn't flown yet. I think that was the first time I had to get on a plane. So I was like very nervous about all that stuff. And then, Canada has done a pretty admirable job at monitoring or controlling the pandemic in some ways. So, mandatory 2-week quarantine upon arrival, which is wild. To actually not be able to leave your house for 2 weeks is there's a stay-at-home order here, but I can walk my dog. But like that's not the case of it. So actually at home. But I was
Oh,
also
wow.
very fortunate that I had we were writing Blind Spotting, the TV show, so like I had plenty of work to do, and I was on writing all day long every day. So that was good. But yeah, that was a trip, and then actual shooting sucks. That's all. I mean, like that's and we're in production on Blind Spotting now, and as a creator, I actually, what I'm excited if we get to do more of this is to go back to being just an actor on something, because the responsibility as a creator, as a showrunner, as a whatever, when you have all of these people risking their lives to make your thing, is like really a lot. And shooting's just not, and also the rewards of being on a set generally are very immediate. It's fun to do, and it is fun to be around people, and it is fun to be creative like that. And it's just not fun right now. So I'm happy that protocols are in place to keep it safe, and I'm happy that people have jobs, and I'm happy that we can continue to create content to keep people entertained as as the world continues to collapse. But it's not fun to make, really, in my experience so far. Not like it should be. You find like moments of joy, but like having to communicate with your director through a mask and a screen, and like not being able to say hello or see everybody else who works on set, because you have to come through a separate entrance and never cross paths with various different people. Like it's an incredible feat of like management to be able to create an environment that is safe and that stops the spread. And so that is cool to be a part of, and I'm very grateful for. But it sucks, and I'd rather it just be done. I don't like working during it. But it's a double-edged sword. I'm glad there is work, but it's not fun to do.
No, it's a really honest answer. And I think a lot of people obviously, share that same sentiment. That said, what was it like when the cast reconvened again in October in the thick of all of this, and also having the understanding that this kind of the isolation, at least, felt like a shared experience. at the same time. Well, how did that change from when you guys were shooting, in advance of us even hearing the word social distancing and all of that? What was that like?
I mean, it was, I love these people so much. So just getting to be around the cast was great. And having, what what ends up happening in COVID protocols is you end up with whoever is in your group, right? Whoever you're shooting with or whatever, if you are a member of a cast and that's the group you're in, like there's a group of people who you automatically become the closest to because you're the only people who ever get to see each other without a ton of PPE on. And so like and even if it's just for a couple of seconds, it's the only time you ever feel like you're having a normal conversation. And I love my cast so much. So I'm glad that those were the people who I got to have that experience with. And then we still did an admirable job of being able to feel together outside of that, always in masks and not going out anymore the way that we used to or doing. But then also, it was also nice to be in Canada for another month because I live in Los Angeles and it's a shit show. So, and has been from jump. So like,
Yes. Yes. I too live in LA, so I share your sentiments there too. Wear a mask, people, please.
Yes,
are you again, without giving away what's gonna happen in this new season, but are you happy with kind of the evolution of Andre? Like, are you happy with the choices that he makes? Because of course everyone's going to be watching this new season thinking that his family may be placed in danger if control is asserted and all of these things. But are you judging your character? Are you happy?
I can't judge him. I don't know if I'm happy about all of them, but like I
Okay.
no judgment. Like I understand why he makes the choices that he makes, and I'm fascinated by Andre. Like I'm always excited to see what he's gonna do next. So
Yeah. Normally when I'm talking with someone who is revisiting a character and coming back for a new season, I love to, ask them what it's like when they're walking down the street and they, kind of come in contact with these uber fans of the show. And that obviously is just not a reality for the space that we're in right now. So I would imagine, and I could be wrong, and I probably am wrong, but I could imagine that maybe you're relying more on what the feedback you're getting from social media. And if that's the case, what has been maybe something that's been validating or something that's felt good to let you know that, that you made the right choice and that you're doing the work that people want to see you do?
I'm to a pretty significant degree ignored feedback on social media. I mean, so I don't get a lot of it that way, but I do that. It's not entirely true. Like I read things, but I don't know. I'm not really looking for feedback that way. But I will say like what I found gratifying, there were a few like sort of indie bloggers who decided to like pick apart every episode of the show in great detail, both responding to the events that happened, but also their responses to the kinds of ways that characters were being portrayed and stuff like that. And a lot of these bloggers were of color and queer, and watching them sort of take the show to task in a lot of ways and not let it off the hook, but also commit to actually really diving deep into the really, really watching the episodes and really picking them apart. Was really gratifying for me, only that anybody saw enough in it to want to spend that much energy on it. So it's not even that all the response was positive, but that it existed, and that there are people out there who have felt marginalized, who feel at least involved enough in the discussion of this show to try and hold it accountable for choices that are made. I found that very, very gratifying. And so I think maybe indicative that like a lot of people are finding themselves in this, or finding a reason to watch it. I don't look at the numbers, and when they do send them to me, I don't know what they mean. So, again, I get to just be an actor on this show, so I don't really have to worry about all that stuff.
Yeah.
But those moments were kind of gratifying, just in the fact that like, oh man, you were really, really thinking about this, and I hope that means that there is enough in the show for you to really think about, and that
Yeah.
you find that experience rewarding. You know.
I love all of that. People are seeing themselves in your series, which has to feel important to you.
Mm.
We opened this conversation by you telling me something that I thought was fantastic. That when you take on a new character, you listen to music, to rap music from where they're from, to kind of get in the feel of them. And I love hearing that. And I know part of why you do that is because you are a musician yourself. When we first talked, probably I don't even know at what point it would have been in 2020, but it was
Mm.
definitely in the thick of things. You had to put a tour on hold with your group. Where are you guys right now musically? I know people are being very creative with how to get music out to the fans. What are you guys doing?
But we've been pretty productive. We've gotten
Yeah.
some things done, and we've been doing a lot of like we've been lucky, I guess, to get some like surprising kind of commercial projects swung away. And that like Puppy for Hanukkah came out. That was like the
Yes.
Disney Channel asking us to write a Hanukkah song, which feels like an odd choice, but it was fun to do.
Mhm.
Yeah, this partnership with Nature Valley, like remaking a Proclaimers song, but that the musicians on that, like I work with these guys on everything, so like that was still
Yeah.
Bill and Jonathan providing the music for that, and so there's been good gigs, like opportunities to like make some money and do some things that were fun and that keep us in the studio, so that like usually if we have to work on something like that, we will also work on it. That also keeps me in here long enough to make something of our own. So stuff
Yeah.
is slowly coming together, and we never have any shortage of ideas. So that's
Yeah.
good. But I miss touring.
Yeah.
We filmed a little like live set not too long ago, but just there's no audience, and it was fun. It was fun to do, but also again like kind of sucked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Missing the live performance element of it. I know that means a lot to you being on stage, getting that immediate response back. But in the interim, you're giving us more Oakland. Tell me about Blind Spotting, the TV series, and what made you want to adapt the film to a TV series.
It was really we didn't want to, and then Lionsgate asked us, and we were like, no, 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 and they said we'll come in and have a conversation about it, and we went in, and over the course of our conversation had kind of talked ourselves into it. We were like, well, no, the only way, like it's impossible. Miles and Colin are we don't want to say anything else about them really. Like only if we focused on Ashley, Jasmine Cephas Jones's character, because
Mhm.
we were always lamenting that we didn't have more time with her in the film, and there are actually scenes that got dropped, and so we were like, I mean, that would be interesting if it was really her show, and then like if it could be less sort of also for TV, like what does that mean? We went on it's a 30-minute sitcom, like we'd have to set it like maybe on one block and have a few different locations or whatever, but
Mhm.
and here are all these different ways we could include like Oakland ideas in them. And then there's the idea of verse, and we'd want to treat that differently if we were doing it again, but still have it. And by the end of the sort of hour conversation, we're like, yeah, we should make this TV show, and it should star Jasmine Cephas Jones, and we're gonna write it, and that's what happened. So
And you guys are actually in production for that right now?
we're in production, and it
Okay.
sucks. It's shooting during the pandemic is the worst, and like the complications of how much can we shoot in Oakland and how much can we shoot here, and the like restrictions on each place are different, and like and our interiors, and when are we losing our sound stages. So it's just like it's so whack. Like it's
Yeah.
already hard enough to make a TV show, and then you throw this on top of it. It's just like this is not cool. But what I will say is we have like the greatest cast in the world, and they're so much fun to watch. And when we do actually get on set and just have them do the thing,
Mm.
and we point a damn camera at them, like it's always magical. They're amazing, and and we our writers that we got to work with are great, and it's a really wild process, and I'm very much enjoying it, even though it's whack.
Well, David Diggs, you are amazing because you have given us a lot of content to watch while we have been forced at home. I feel like you are across every dial. You're on Disney Plus, Apple TV, TNT. You are everywhere, and you're also making movies. You're voicing, characters too. Again, in the midst of a pandemic, which makes you, I think, probably one of the hardest working people in this industry right now. So thank you for all that you're doing. And thank you so much for talking with AAFCA today. We really appreciate that.
Oh man, appreciate it so much, y'all. Thank you.
Thank you.